really what Jesus is showing us is we have a very powerful mind. And as we pull our mind away from the ego, we learn to release the ego beliefs and the judgments and attack thoughts, then we are naturally psychic. We are naturally telepathic. We have all kinds of psychic abilities that are not extraordinary. They're actually natural. And we can evolve very quickly when we allow ourselves to let miracles be performed through us, because they kind of rinse our mind of these limiting beliefs.
I've been able to partner with Headspace to bring you a special 14-day free trial to explore all Headspace has to offer. You can think of Headspace as your mind's best friend. Through science-backed meditation and mindfulness tools, Headspace helps you create life-changing habits to support your mental health and find a healthier, happier you. Headspace is proven to reduce stress by 14% in just 10 days. It can also help you relax your mind in minutes, improve focus, and get the best sleep ever. To access your 14-day free trial, simply click the link below or head over to chrissykdm.org/headspace. I would like to welcome David Hoffmeister to the show. Welcome, David. How are you this morning?
Hi, Chrissy. I'm doing wonderful. So grateful to be on with you for this podcast.
Yes. Oh, I'm absolutely honored to be able to have a conversation with you. I myself have been deep into A Course in Miracles. I've studied it for about 12 years, but since I went to Hawaii in March, I dived in super deep and I'm doing all the lessons. I've been watching your shows on A Course in Miracles. I think you have a couple of different channels. And today I would just like to pick your brain about a few things. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. Sounds like fun.
Great. So before we get started into the context of A Course in Miracles, would you be able to tell us a little bit about how you found, or not how you found, but how the Course in Miracles found you?
Yeah. It was back, I was just finishing up a lot of years in university, 10 years in university full time. And it was the summer of 1986. And I felt, I'm going to California. I'm going to a humanistic psychology conference, kind of an annual event that Carl Rogers was out there and Virginia Satir and Francis Vaughn, a lot of humanistic psychologists, transpersonal psychologists. I said, wow. And Pacific Ocean, beaches, warm, salty air coming in. I said, I think I need to take off from Cincinnati and go out there. And when I was there, I kept going down where the speakers and the professionals were sharing their books and audios, videos at the time, different things. And I came across two students of a Course in Miracles teacher called Tara Singh. And it was a very powerful encounter. And I kept coming back there, skipping some of the presentations I planned to go to, talking to them about A Course in Miracles, about their teacher, Tara Singh, looking at a book that they had called Forgiveness in Jesus by Ken Wapnick, and just feeling like a tsunami of love going over me when I opened up the book, A Course in Miracles. And I felt like the feeling internally was like, wow, my whole life is going in a different direction, a different tangent than anything I would imagine. And that's kind of the way that it went. So after that, I went up to Los Angeles and visited the center where Tara Singh had called Foundation for Life Action. And I was with a friend of mine up there who was also into Yogananda and Kriya Yoga. And so that was my launch. That got me going with the Course in Miracles.
I love that. I noticed that you said, I can't remember exactly the words you used, but how it just felt different to you. I noticed that when I read the Course in Miracles compared to any other book, it's not just reading words. I feel it deeply, deeply in my heart when I read it.
Yeah.
So I know that it's very special, right? Like, how was the Course in Miracles? How did it come about?
Well, back in 1965, two Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center employees, Dr. William Thedford and Dr. Helen Schuckman, were working in the same psychology department, research psychologist, and basically Helen started to get some very vivid dreams and some visions, and it was kind of a foreshadowing that something was coming. And it was very surprising for her. And I think she probably told her colleague, her boss, basically, Bill Thedford, about a few of those things. And so they were still a little surprised when she started hearing this like internal, it wasn't like an audible voice, but it was this internal voice in her mind that kept coming and coming, saying, "This is a Course in Miracles, please take notes." Mm-hmm. And Helen said to Bill, it won't go away. It keeps saying, "This is a Course in Miracles, please take note." It's almost insistent. And he said, "Well, let's just take it down." And she was very good with shorthand. Take it down. And if we write it down and we read it the next day, if it touches us, if it touches our heart, we can relate to it, connect to it, we'll keep going. If not, we'll just throw it in the trash can and pretend it never happened. And so, yeah, it started off with, this is a Course in Miracles, and it is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. And that introduction came. And then they did continue on for about 7 years. And so that's how we got A Course in Miracles. It's what people would call a channeled writing from Jesus.
From Jesus, yeah. Yes, I love that. Now, you mentioned that it's a required course, and it's only the time that you choose to take it. Now, I know when I've read through it, and I've read through the whole text, and now I use it as an oracle. So I let it open to whatever page speaks to me that day. Yeah. And now what I always get, I struggle sometimes with the language. I have to read it really slow. Sometimes I have to look things up. But what I do know is over and over, it does say that the holy instant is up to you when you decide. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the holy instant in common terms, we would say, is the present moment that all the mystics and saints and sages and avatars have talked about for centuries. Eckhart Tolle, talks about the present moment and presence. And we could say that that is our point of power. That's our point of prayer. And most importantly, it's our point of decision. Because in heaven, it's just pure oneness and bliss and God, and we'll say isness. Heaven is just all isness. There's no words or decisions to make. But for a mind that has fallen asleep and forgotten heaven, then heaven seems to take the form of a choice, because the mind that believes in opposites believes in choices. So the light has to reach that mind in a way, and that's what the atonement is, and that's really what the holy instant's all about, is coming to focus our mind fully on the present moment. First of all, by receiving guidance that comes for us. It's always present guidance. We don't have to try to wait for future guidance or try to analyze past guidance. It's always just, what is the guidance now? And then as we go deeper with that, we feel more permission and allowance, I think, to just let go our thoughts of the past and future and really embrace the present moment that all the mystics and saints have always talked about. So I would just say we can open to it by desiring it. We can't really prepare for the holy instant because it's not in the future. So he says, you don't prepare for it. You just bring it into awareness through your desire. And that's what all the sages have said, desire love, desire God, desire oneness, and then everything else is taken care of automatically.
Yes, I love that. Now, I love that you mentioned the atonement. So in my personal experience with the Course, I went to a group actually for the first maybe 5 years that I was studying it. And every time I look up, atonement means to correct errors. And I still notice when I read it, I get a little caught up every time it mentions the atonement. Can you talk about the atonement and what that means?
Yeah, I would say the one word that you mentioned that's a synonym for it is correction, which is kind of important because some of us were raised with the word called sin, and we had some pretty dark meanings, like a black mark on your soul, and people saying you're a sinner and everything, and Jesus tells us that sin is an error to be corrected. And the atonement is the correction. So that's pretty magnificent. If Jesus is just a symbol of one who accepted the atonement for everyone, and Jesus says in the Course, when I awoke, you were with me. So then that sounds even better, like, wow, it's a done deal. And then my favorite definition of A Course in Miracles use of atonement is it's a total escape from the past and a complete lack of interest in the future. And that is really a beautiful gift, because it's basically saying right here, right now, we are innocent, we are loved, there is no guilt in this moment. And I always like to say there aren't really any problems in this very moment. They're always remembered or anticipated, regrets of the past or anticipated future problems. And so really the atonement is just to be still and come and be fully present and realize that heals the whole universe too. It's not just a personal healing, it actually is for the whole universe.
Yes, I love that. You just brought that in, where it heals the whole universe. So I've been doing the lessons in the book. There's 365, one for every day of the year. And I'm currently on lesson 71. I did not start on January 1st. I started sometime in March. And it does say over and over again that I'm going to probably not get the wording right on this, but that we don't reach the atonement alone. Can you speak to that a little bit, where we bring our brothers and sisters with us?
Yeah, I think we have been so accustomed to identifying ourselves as a body and a person that when we think of healing, we even think of it in that way. We think of healing in a personal way. And when we are told, when I am healed, I am not healed alone, it's basically saying that there's really one mind, and that one mind seems to have fallen asleep and forgot the mind of God, forgot the perfection and the oneness of eternal life. But it believes it's separate, and then when it finally accepts the correction for this tiny mad idea that it has taken seriously instead of laughed at it, then the mind remembers its oneness with God. And so in that sense, all our brothers and sisters are taken in to that experience of unification, of healing. So it's a wonderful idea, because it removes all sense of competition. It removes all sense of comparison. Even with spirituality, there's such a tendency of, oh, my teacher and your teacher, and my perception and your perception. And, I like that song, you say potato, I say potato, you say tomato, I say tomato, potato, tomato, tomato. Let's call the whole thing off.
Yes.
Let's call duality off, and let's live in happiness and joy, because that's really what the atonement is showing us. And I love that you looked it up and brought up that it really means correction, because sometimes people will pronounce it at-one-ment, but actually the oneness of God doesn't need a correction. In other words, heaven is perfect, but
Right.
it's believing in the fragmentation that's requiring forgiveness, or to release the duality and the multiplicity and all the comparisons and judgments. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's very astute.
Yeah, I love how you described that and how you brought in duality. So for me, I know that there was a big part of my journey where it was easy for me to understand the concept that I am one with God. But the Course, for me, what I've noticed is it's really causing me to see everyone as me and to see myself as them, which can be very difficult sometimes because I'm so wrapped up in the illusion of separation with bodies. But it also brings me a huge amount of relief, because then I tend to put people on pedestals. It's always kind of like my journey has been where I always put someone above me and then I'm below. There's a few times where it's opposite, but most of the time, everyone else is better than me. And as I do the work in the Course, as I do the lessons, I notice that I actually feel more at peace. It's easier for me to connect with people, especially when I'm thinking that they're better. Like, for instance, and I'm just going to be transparent with you, I was so excited to have this conversation with you. I think the first time you called me, I might have told you that I felt a little starstruck. And, you know, and that's alive, but also we are one. And so it helps me alleviate some of that anxiety, I guess, that I would put on that. So I loved how you brought that into the conversation.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, we mentioned the body. So the way I understand the Course, I would like for you to speak to this, but the way I understand it is that our bodies are the illusion of separation. So because I'm in a body, because you're in a body, because my kids are in a body, it appears like we're separate, but we're really not. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it seems it's just a we'll call it just a misidentification. So as we go for healing, that's important to get really clear on too, because if the body is just part of our fragmented perception, then it can't be any better or worse than any other aspect of the cosmos, than black holes and stars and mountains and trees and cars and people and buildings. You know, the body is just a symbol. So when we give it over to the Holy Spirit and we say, please use all the symbols for healing of my mind, for the unification of my perception, it's just like saying, oh, I want a happy dream. And Jesus is telling us, yeah, well, that's there for you. The Holy Spirit has a big gift for you, and it's called the happy dream. And that way you're still seeming to dream a dream, and you're still perceiving bodies, and you're still perceiving images, and as if there are separate things going on. But your mind becomes so tranquil and still because you're more aware of witnessing the world or observing the world than being identified with a particular character. The mini-me, as and Austin Powers, you know, made a good joke, a good movie, a couple movies off of mini-me. But so in that sense, we start to face, wow, the ego is heavily invested in the body as our alternate reality or alternate home. The ego is just telling us, well, you threw away heaven. You fell from grace. You know, you've left your source. So now you have to make the best of it with what you've got left. And that is, for the mind that's asleep, it can be very enticing and a slippery slope. It can be, it can actually, the ego tries to make the body either attractive or it tries to hate it. You know, it's two angles, but in either way, it is trying to make it real in awareness, whereas the Holy Spirit just sees it as a symbol that can be used for communication and extending light and love and joy, humor, laughter for a period of time, and then it can be gently laid aside along with the rest of the world. So that's that's what it seems to be. And then we just need to pray for a reinterpretation of the body and the world. We don't have to deny it. We don't have to say, you know, I always make a joke of two Course in Miracles students getting into an argument, and then it gets into a heated argument, and then finally one says, wait a minute, I'm not here and you're not here and we're not having this conversation. And that is denial of the body. That's
Right.
an inappropriate use of denial. But actually to start to do, like you said, to really start to see beyond it, to see the sameness, that we're the same one, that we really are truly the same one, and that we can love and appreciate that, then we don't put our focus on the body. We put our focus on that deep feeling of love and connection. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned denial. And I know for me, I actually personally have used some of the information to deny my body. So I found A Course in Miracles prior to getting sober from drugs and alcohol. And before that, I had an eating disorder. And so I have, you know, I'm going to be transparent and admit that I have used the concepts to spiritually bypass and say, oh, it doesn't matter because the body isn't real. However, we are in this human experience. It is a very dense and firm experience. I can feel my body when I touch it. In fact, today I am, you know, feeling some scratchiness in my throat and some body aches. And so I'm having a real experience of my body. And I know in Lesson 76, it talks about the laws of God versus the laws of the world. And I'm going to find this, but I believe it mentions something specifically about medicine. Can you speak to a little bit about that? Because I know every time I do have a physical ailment, I get confused. Like, well, do I treat myself with medicine? Or like, you know, I get all, this body isn't real, but it is real.
Yeah, we could talk about medicine. Yeah, Jesus sometimes refers to medicine as part of a larger category that he calls magic. But magic, it wouldn't just be medicine, it would be too if you were cold in the winter and you use a warm fur coat to stay warm. That's magic. Or to even adjust the thermostat on your house, the heating and air conditioning, that's magic. People like Mohandas Gandhi, you know, the great Mahatma Gandhi, he was into like herbal medicines. And so it seems a little bit different from the kind of pharmaceutical medicines that we're accustomed to in the Western world. But all of these I just give as an example are part of magic. And magic is a belief that something in form can be useful temporarily or helpful. And what Jesus is teaching us in the Course is he's saying, ultimately, there's nothing wrong with magic. It's just that as you go deeper into the miracle and you go deeper into the healing of the mind, toward the atonement, toward the light in your mind, that the beliefs in certain things, including magic, will fade away. But he's not saying that that it's a good or a bad thing. He even says that if there's too much fear in the mind to just decide for a healing moment, that sometimes a combination of magic and miracle is necessary. That's an interesting thing coming from Jesus, a mix of magic and miracle. Well, that just means that if at times you want to use something that will help alleviate the symptoms or maybe minimize the symptoms or whatever, as you continue on with your prayers and your mind training, then he's saying you're not doing anything wrong. He's just saying there will come a time where you won't be afraid of love. You won't be afraid of healing, and it will be instantaneous instead of seemingly playing out over time.
I love that. I noticed just feeling some relief there because I had not ever read or heard or interpreted that you could use a mix of magic and miracles. So I loved hearing that. Thank you so much. I really do want to, talk about lesson 76, because I think it's something, it's really big for me. It's really big for some of the clients I coach with, and I've been hearing a lot. The lesson itself is, I am under no laws but God's. What are God's laws?
Well, God's laws are eternal. And really, it's quite simple. It's just the only law in heaven, the only law that God has is the law of love, eternal love. So, wow, when we are opening up from that lesson, I am under no laws but God's, we're really just affirming deep down inside that we want to be under only the law of love. And that is eternal love. So what we could say is the ego is a made-up belief about our identity, a belief in separation, a tiny mad idea, and then all of the laws that seem to be taken for granted in this world. It could be the laws of economics, the laws of friendship, the laws of medicine. It could be anything that relates to the world, the law of gravity, the laws of thermodynamics, the laws of physics. All of them are made up. And then we know from our looking at studies of the mystics and saints and yogis sometimes that they thought, in most research, scientific research, for many years, they believed that there were certain processes like the heartbeat that were involuntary, and then there's other things that were voluntary that you could control. And now we're starting to realize from the yogis that they were controlling things like heartbeat, that were thought to be involuntary. So yeah. Really what Jesus is showing us is we have a very powerful mind. And as we pull our mind away from the ego, we learn to release the ego beliefs and the judgments and attack thoughts, then we are naturally psychic. We are naturally telepathic. We have all kinds of psychic abilities that are not extraordinary. They're actually natural. And we can evolve very quickly when we allow ourselves to let miracles be performed through us, because they kind of rinse our mind of these limiting beliefs. So I think the good news is the law of God is eternal love, eternal life, and it's very simple. Wouldn't we have loved to grown up with only one law? And Jesus is like, well, you're just remembering God when you come back to love, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that. And now I know, because I'm pretty versed, maybe not as much as you are, but when you say eternal love, so we are eternal beings, and our time here in this reality that we call Earth is just like a speck of our eternalness. Can you talk about that and what the Course in Miracles says about our souls as eternal?
Yeah, there actually was a time where Helen Schuckman was kind of with Jesus, merged with Jesus, and it was kind of like that. Remember the original Superman movie that came out with Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder, where he kind of takes her up and he takes her flying through the air, and we're listening to Maureen McGovern's song, and we're whoa, flying through the air with Superman, but he had her with him, and then they were flying so fast through so many things, and at one point she said, I almost missed, as I looked down, I almost missed the entire life of Helen Schuckman because it was so tiny, it was so infinitesimally small. And that kind of gives a perspective, like what we take to be so serious, which is our personal lives, and so to speak, and our personal perspective is really just such a tiny speck, and it doesn't really amount to anything in terms of eternity, which is the experience of timelessness. It's just isness. It's just forever and ever, like the love songs. We love to listen to our forever, everlasting love, and I will love you forever. That touches our heart. So the spirit is eternal, and everything that comes from the spirit is eternal. Heaven is an eternal state of being. And then what we perceive as time and the timeline is just opportunities, lots of opportunities to forgive and to release the past and the future. So that's the practice. That's what we're doing when we're really diving into this Course in Miracles journey.
Yes, yes. And what you just said hit on another point that I wanted to talk to you about, which is the use of time. So the way I understand is that our use of time is for what you just said, forgiveness. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Yeah, the Holy Spirit uses time to teach us that there is no time. And so that is a different version of forgiveness than most of us were raised with, because oftentimes we were raised with people have done things against us, they've harmed us, they've neglected us, they've abused us, and somehow we have to forgive them, even though there's a part of our mind that's going, no, they did it. I have a tape recording of it. I know, I have the evidence. And what Jesus is saying is, no, it's the whole idea of everything, all the perceptions and memories of linear time are part of a distortion of that is really fearful and guilty. And it's not in reality, but in perception, it feels that way. So it's basically letting go of everything we think and think we know about this world. And some people may say, that sounds kind of gullible. I would not use the word gullible. I would use the word humble. I like the word clueless too. I am the happiest when I am absolutely clueless. And the more clueless I am, I feel deliriously happy. So I see there's a strong connection. Even when people talk about Alzheimer's or dementia, I will put the spiritual word in front of it. When people say, it's terrible, I'm forgetting everything. And I said, oh, you're getting an advanced case of spiritual Alzheimer's or dementia. And they laugh because I see it as a positive thing.
Yeah, I know. So in my recovery journey, one of the prayers that really helped me and still continues to help me is the set aside prayer. The set aside prayer. And it's, God, help me forget everything I think I know about recovery, about myself, and teach me what I need to know about this situation. So I took that into, I facilitate authentic relating modalities. And one of my mottos was, every time I think I know, I'm an ego. And when I started to really dive into the Course in Miracles, and it spoke to me about transparency and perfect communication, it clicked. And I realized, this is why I'm so passionate about authentic relating. But I know that I still have a sticky time. I have a very sticky time really trusting myself in hearing the communication that's coming from the Holy Spirit or coming from God. Can you talk about how, like, trusting and listening to guidance, can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think I was using A Course in Miracles at the beginning more like you are as an oracle. And I found it so helpful in just getting so much clarity and guidance. And some people talk about using pendulums or anything. I was using that Course in Miracles oracle.
I've used pendulums.
Yeah, whatever works, that's the thing. And I was using popping the book open, the paperback book, that I wore the gold letters off of the book because I was using it so much as an oracle. But then I started to kind of open up more and more to the presence, saying, yeah, I can reach you through songs on the radio, through bumper stickers, billboards. Someone who you meet and is talking to you, I can speak through them. So it kind of took the pressure off of thinking David has to learn to hear the voice for God, hear the Holy Spirit, which was kind of pressurized and tight, to, okay, reach me. If I've got an unconscious mind and I'm sleepwalking here, I'll take it any way it can come. So it came in many, many directions, and I felt good. I felt like, ooh, I'm opening up, I'm expanding, I'm getting more intuitive. I'm moving towards 100% intuitivity, and I'm going there. But that helped, and then the music, songs on the radio, and then spirit giving here. This was back in the days of cassettes and putting together little cassettes of my favorite inspired songs and feeling all fired up and inspired. And then with CDs, the same. And then with movies, yeah, I got into that. Take me to the movies. I'm blocked somehow. I've got unconscious blocks that I'm not even aware of. Take me to the movies. Show me through the movies. Let me emote, cry. Let me open my heart up and feel all the emotions I need to feel to heal my mind. So to me, it was a progression. And I have to say that I would say is the most important aspect of I would say the most practical aspect of spirituality is cultivating that connection, not with a sense of pressure that it has to come in a particular form, but just reach me, help me, bring to my awareness what will really help me on my journey of remembering God, and then let it come. And it's actually so fun and so delightful when we don't put pressure on ourselves to try to decide first the form that we want to receive it in. And so then it got to the point where Spirit could speak through me and at big conferences, and I was very shy, so that was kind of an extreme example of standing in front of 500 people and just showing up with nothing prepared and letting it just pour out. You know, that for me was showing me, wow, this is really the most practical aspect of spirituality.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know that this morning in the lesson 71, I think it's the lesson is God's plan for salvation is the only one that will work. And for the second half of the longer practice period, we asked the question, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? And as I've only done one long practice period today, so I've got another one later, but as I was doing it, I noticed like energy getting all worked up. What if I don't hear it? What if I don't hear it? And what's so beautiful is that when you were explaining that, it just reminded me that the Holy Spirit uses everything, and all we have to do is pay attention. And sometimes we don't even need to pay attention. It will happen. Like yesterday, I think, no, the day before yesterday, my daughter asked if I wanted to watch a show with her. And so I just said, okay. And it was called Living with Yourself on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it, but we watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a great and my daughter, I mean, that's not something that she's really in tune with. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, that was definitely, a message for me. So
yeah.
I loved how you explained that. So I kind of want to switch gears here now, since the shows and songs, since you brought that in. You are really into movies, and you have a movie watcher's guide to enlightenment. Can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah, I mean, after I went through a phase of huge music, letting the music guide me and speak to me and open my heart up, then I remember the Jesus was just saying, let's go, let's start to use some movies. And I want you to just go to the movies or watch the movies I'm guiding you to watch. And I want you to just let all your emotions up, whatever they are. Just if you're laughing, laugh. If you're angry or irritated, or if you're crying, let it all come up. Don't try to censor your emotions or block your emotions, because that's part of the healing is allowance of the emotions to come up. So at first I would go to a few movies, and then it got to be where Jesus would just take me to the movie theaters, and I would see these most profound. I would have very profound experiences at the movies, and then I would want to process it. So I would sit in the theater until they started to clean up the floor and gather up the popcorn, and I'm like, okay. I go out to sit in my car and just pray and say, show me, while all the emotions were still up, show me, use this to clear my mind and to heal my mind of whatever I was feeling. And sometimes I would sit in the car for a couple, 2 or 3 hours, processing and praying and going through big time healing. And so eventually I was even the last kind of job, like you had a corporate job or were teaching, or maybe something with real estate. I was teaching psychology at an art institute in downtown Cincinnati. And when I went there, I thought, okay, is this what you want me to do, Spirit? And yes, they were 4-hour classes. So I was guided to actually go and get full-length movies, and I was guided to start to set them up and to share the themes, the issues and the themes that the psychology class we were all looking at through the movies. And people absolutely loved it. And then when I started to travel, I started to show movies, and people would, The Matrix and Truman Show and Source Code and 13th Floor, all these deep metaphysical movies. And some of my friends started to actually had some mystical experiences with the movies. I was in, I think, Caracas, Venezuela, showing, maybe it was the Truman Show, I think. And this woman at the end, she just had tears just streaming down her face. And she looked at me as I came out of the gathering, and she went, God is real. She said, I had my first experience that God is real through one of the movie workshops. And I thought, wow, how it was humbling and beautiful that someone could feel that love and connection for the first time in their life through a movie experience. So yeah, it just has evolved to the point where I came up with a site called Levels of Mind, which is really working the perception that you're dealing with back into your mind, so you can look at the beliefs and thoughts and then have a release point. Then they made it into like an app that was on like a app on Facebook for a while, and then it became the Spiri app, and there's more with AI. It's being developed of just ways where people can have an interactive experience of going into their mind. And the movies are still very strong. People go in there and they either grab the movie reviews and then they go and rent the movie and watch it, or they can go in there and they can actually watch me taking them through a whole movie and set up and coming in for commentary. And people have amazing experiences with that too. So I have a lot of fun. I just enjoy it.
I know sometimes when I'm in the mood to watch a movie, I will go and search the directory. I know you can search by feelings and different themes. And so I will do that sometimes so that I can get a movie that resonates with whatever I'm wanting to feel or feeling at the time. And I love how, so The Vast Illusion by Kenneth Wapnick, I hope I didn't mess that up, but he talks about the Course in Miracles and how time is an illusion. And the metaphor is that we're literally watching, like, our life is a movie on a screen. So I love how using movies, because it's really all the same thing, right? We're channeling that piece of information, that source of information to us in that moment for whatever it is that we're needing at the time.
Yeah, it's beautiful that way. It is.
Yeah.
It's we can relate to it that way.
Yeah. And I noticed too, like, I've been coaching, I've been sponsoring and coaching since 2009. And it's so much easier to see what's happening outside of myself. Which leads me to a question that I've got for you, or a topic that we can move into discussing. There was an episode I saw on your YouTube channel that just kept reiterating, everything is a me problem. It's never a you problem. It's always a me problem. So even if we see it outside of ourselves, it's something that exists within us. So how about we talk about our external world is a reflection of our internal world?
Yeah, that's wow. Talk about the key to happiness. That one line you just said, our external world is a reflection of our internal. I would say that's actually the purpose of the workbook, the 365 lessons, is just to have an experience that there's not an internal and an external, or as Krishnamurti would say, there's not a subject and an object. It's just unified awareness is happiness, is joy, is peace and glee, and yet the ego is very clever, so it projected a world to try to get rid of upset and guilt by seeing it as if it were external. But the only thing is when it's believed to be external, then it gives rise to, again, that perception of victimization, of abuse, of mistreatment that is such a core. That's why people get into addictions in the first place, is they have such darkness that they're dealing with in their mind, and they don't really feel like they have the tools. It's not like we are trained in grade school and junior high and high school to be like spiritual seekers or psychologists, or spiritual psychologists. We're just trying to deal with growing up and dealing with changes in our bodies and changes in our world. So in that sense, that's the greatest experience, is just to start to realize that there is no external world, and that he talks about that. It's coming up. You've probably got another maybe 60 lessons to go, but lesson 132 is, he's going to come right out as, there's no world apart from that what we wish. So that, even if we look at Sigmund Freud, he said that dreams are wish fulfillment, and he was talking about our nighttime dreams. And then we have the Master Jesus coming along and saying, well, all your time is spent dreaming. What you consider your daily life and your nighttime dreams are wish fulfillment. And when you're believing in the ego, that's a death wish. And so that's not surprising that we have some pretty harsh, horrific interpretations of this earth experience. But as we learn to release those attack thoughts and judgments and grievances, it gets happier and happier and happier and happier. And we think, oh my gosh, this is feeling a little closer to heaven on earth. Because when we don't judge, then we're healed. In fact, there was a psychotherapy pamphlet apart from the course. It's in the supplements, it's called, and there's a great line in there that says, healing occurs the instant that the therapist forgets to judge the patient. So with your coaching, what a gift. You get paid
Right.
to practice forgiveness and let go of judgments. That's amazing.
Yeah. I loved how you said that, because when I got sober, immediately after I worked the 12 steps for the first time, my sponsor highly suggested, and when my sponsor suggested something, we would call it a subtle command, because I'm an adult and I have a choice. But she highly suggested that I start sponsoring others. And I had the course because I had already been studying it. The course actually gave me enough of an understanding to pray to God. And so I was praying to God to help me stop the pattern, and he answered my prayer. And so it did give me enough, but I was still very, very new. This was 10 years ago. And every time my sponsees, the people I was helping, would call me, I would go into judgment, and I would have to go call my sponsor. She would remind me how I was that when I started. And so, yes, it was a great, great gift. And I notice now in this time, it's still difficult. Like there are some things that are super easy to take on as myself. And then there are things that are not so easy, but mostly with my kids. And but the minute it's such a gift, because the minute I notice I need them to be different, or I can't understand why they won't listen to me, I know that's my point of, oh, this is a projection of myself, something I haven't accepted. I'm putting it out there so I don't have to be responsible for it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What a gift, to just even begin to be on the awareness of that, because then, your children are the mirrors, everything, the ones you're coaching, the clients are the mirrors, and it starts to take you into like this vastness and this fulfillment and this deep love in the heart, because it just starts to pour through and wants to pour through even more. And so what a gift that we have to be able to just be open to that perspective, and having that victim mentality that washed away from our mind.
Yeah, it's not washed away all the way.
It's
It
washing.
happens. It's washing away. It's a lot less actually. When I was in treatment, so I was in treatment for an eating disorder, and then I got sober 5 years after that, which is now 9.5, almost 10 years ago. It was about 3 weeks that my treatment team took, and this was not just my treatment team, this was other girls in treatment. They had an intervention with me, and they really asked me, they were like, can you see how much of a victim you are? And I could not see it. And then I finally did. So that was a huge gift in seeing that, but I was in denial for sure. My mind did not want to let go of that at all. But I will say the peace in knowing that I'm not a victim is so much better than the reality I experienced living as a victim.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's huge. I just feel so grateful that your story is again a parable of you have to face up to some things that sometimes we tried to avoid, but eventually through the infinite kindness of love, we give up and we face what we need to face, and we feel so grateful that we did.
Yes. Yeah, and what the course has done for me in that is taking it up a notch, where it's not so much about not being a victim anymore, but actually seeing the light and the Christ and the holiness in our brother. And that is master level stuff for me, at least.
Yes, I think for everyone, seeing the Christ in everyone you meet is master level. That's
I know.
mastery.
Yeah, I find it easier with strangers for sure than people that I have a story that have wronged me, or
Yeah. It's the
like
past
that.
associations. Yeah, that's it. It takes a while to let those past associations be rinsed, but yeah, that's the process of the rinsing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. It takes a while. I know for me, a contention point where I'm not always at peace is that I don't want it to take a while. If I know this, it should happen right now. If I just prayed right now should be the point. But it does take time. I know, in my journey, I've been doing a lot of spiritual work since 2007, 2008. But I would say that, really in the past year or two is where I've been experiencing the results of that effort or that work. And not that those years before were wasted, but just that I think there's a point, at least for me in my experience, where it kind of just clicks and sinks, or there's enough healing. What would you have to say about that? I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, I think it is kind of, seems to go exponentially, like it seems like in the last couple of years, it's just taking off. And when it takes off, all you can do is just really enjoy the ride, like really enjoy it. Like I have a friend who, he went through the 12-step program and he was so grateful. And then he got into the course and he met me at a conference in New York City. And then we've known each other. He's working now to try to get me into the prisons, where people, he got into the prisons. He's sharing these ideas in the prisons, lots of prisons all over the country. And now he wants to get me into a prison where they're using the movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment. The prisoners are watching the movies. They're crying, they're emoting, they're journaling, they're going through huge healing inside the prison. And it starts to really put a perspective like, wow, that's a good use of time.
Mhm.
If in a prison, that is a great use of time. But my friend, you would probably really enjoy meeting him and have so much to talk about, because I said, you've got like a quad ministry now. You've got 12 steps, Course in Miracles, Christianity, and a prison ministry. He's doing a 4-pronged ministry with all these things, and he is just lighting up like a bright candle. He has such deep contact with the prisoners that when they finally get released, he's waiting for them to be, he's the first one that they hug when they come out. He's going around, floating around to different Christian churches and to different pastors. He's sharing with Course in Miracles people around the world, collaborating. And 12 steps, he's loving it. He's going to open like a center a little bit north of where you are, I guess, in Nevada, build a center for people with 12 steps who got into the teachings of the Course, and make a whole healing center. So it's like, it just opens up and opens up and opens up far beyond what we can imagine. And then that's what we have to look forward to, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So H&I, Health and Institutions, I had three, all my kids were young when I got sober, so I never got into that, but I always had a desire to, probably because of the Course. You know, we are all love. Like every action that we take is just an attempt to feel better. And so, you know, these people are locked up, but really what they need is love. And so much of what you just said, I could probably talk about forever. Once I got into the rooms and I started to work the 12 steps, I immediately had this, why are we not teaching this in kindergarten? Why don't we, you know, share this information? And so it's really been, it's been huge. When my kids try to tattle on each other, you know, I'm asking them, well, what's your part? Like, what did you do in this?
Mhm.
And so I recently, actually, I'm going to be talking with my cousin tomorrow. She's sober as well. I just recently created a 12 weeks to a miracle mind, where I've taken the 12 steps and A Course in Miracles and created a 12-week program using 1 step per week, but using the principles of the Course in Miracles with that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, there it goes. It's
I
already
know.
happening.
Yes. Yeah. And I do want to roll out, you know, a bigger program to more people, and, you know, have it be more than a one-on-one. But I'm actually, you know, putting it out there that I would like to not do that alone. I'd like to do it with another person, another
Yeah,
human. Not that I'd be
yeah.
alone, because Jesus this.
Collaboration.
Yeah.
Collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. Yeah. There was something else that you said in that I wanted to touch on. Well, I wanted to talk about, yeah, so the prisoners. So in the Course, I know that when I was going to the groups, a lot of people were stuck on this. They could not get over it. And this might be a really sensitive subject to bring up, but I think it's really important. So what I understand is that if we see, according to the Course, if we are seeing murder or other crimes like child abuse, or even sexual crimes, that is a part of our mind that isn't healed. Like that the path is to go into where we've had murderous thoughts and hand those over to the Holy Spirit. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's so important. I remember even with Gandhi, a woman one time brought her daughter to see Gandhi and said, please, you must talk to my daughter. She's got this issue that she's dealing with. She eats too much sugar. And so the mother brought the daughter in, and Gandhi spent some time with the daughter, and then said, well, go home now and everything, and come back in a couple of weeks, I think. And when the mother brought the daughter back, she said, why would you do that? Why would you send us away for 2 weeks? And Gandhi said, I eat too much sugar. And I love that, because that just shows that we're dealing with a perceptual problem. And the reason it's so difficult for people to open up to that principle in A Course in Miracles, that the world is just a mirror of what's going on in our consciousness, is that some things seem so horrendous and so horrific, even with concentration camps and child trafficking and all kinds of things, that it's part of that underlying unconscious belief in evil. And we could say that, like the iceberg analogy, that what we perceive in conscious awareness, what we seem to touch and taste and feel and are aware of, is just the top of the tip of the iceberg, and most of it is underneath the water. It's unconscious. So it's starting to realize that if I have a murderous thought, if you talk to most people, they would say, well, there's a lot of difference between having a murderous thought and acting on a murderous thought. They would say big difference, but really not to Jesus. Jesus is teaching us, he taught us the Beatitudes. He was so gentle and kind and loving. And he had realized that if you have a thought that God did not create, like murder or any kind of crime, then you actually are perceiving something that is not in alignment with love, and that you need to release that from your mind, instead of trying to attack or defend, or instead of trying to make something of it. You need to actually heal that. So basically, in terms of like anger and hatred, Jesus says in the Course, he said, you can't really be free of hatred until you notice and are aware of the full extent of your own self-hatred. And we could say the ego belief system is the self-hatred, because it's not the Christ self, which is pure love. So to have a scrap of investment, just a scrap of investment in ego is going to produce rage. It can be numbed out and pushed out and repressed out of awareness. So you perceive it as a mosquito that's buzzing and annoying you. That doesn't seem like intense rage, but that just shows how the mind can come up with defense mechanisms and minimize anger, hatred, rage, and then see it as irritation, annoyance, something just not quite right. But when we're going for this pristine love of the Christ, we have to question everything that we believe. And that takes a lot of inner searching and willingness to face anything and forgive it. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't ever think it's important as we're just shining and sharing. We're not here to question our brothers. We're not here to confound them. We're not even here to correct them. We're here to be the presence of love and not judge anyone and anything. And then it's our demonstration of our attitude that shows that there's a better way. But we're not here to go around and try to verbally correct people that can get into quite a mess. If you try to correct your brothers and sisters.
Yes, yes. And I gosh, the way that you explained that was so helpful to me. And I think it's still hard, but for me, when I read that an attack thought, it doesn't matter the intensity. Like just having the judgment is the same as, the murderous action. And to me, that really hit me because I, had a huge judgment that there were so many things wrong with the world, like with school shootings and, all these things that just are so, so dark according to my perception. And I really just want to spread love all through the world. I just want everyone to know the truth of who they are, which is why I'm doing this podcast. And really, it does start with us. It starts with those little things. And so the minute that clicked with my awareness, I realized I drive a lot. I'm in parent pickup lines, and there's a lot of traffic in those.
Yeah.
And I would get very mad and I would cuss a lot, but I would think it's okay because they can't even hear me. It's not hurting them. But the energy, when I realized the impact of the energy, I was like, I'm never doing that again. And I do slip once in a while if someone cuts me off, but then I immediately ask for forgiveness and see myself. But it's really powerful. And I also see it as something that appears to be very difficult to actually do in this human experience.
Yeah. I do have a lot of people that will say to me, David, they'll say, I'm no saint. I say, no, but you are a saint in training. And it's fun to watch their eyes light up like, what did you call me? I said, a saint in training. Because I always feel like we're to be looking to the goodness in us, to our full potential, our going all the way to our limitlessness. And that really what I meant by a saint in training. And then you start to really see that in everyone. And so, you just start to look at people and you think they're just adorable. It's adorable. And here you are just sharing openly, transparently. Okay, here's what mom pickup line. I've got to pick my kids up and I've got to deal with the traffic and the people all trying to get in. And that's example of, we have to practice it all the time. And we can't just compartmentalize parts of our life and say, I'll get back to the practice after I get to pick up the kids.
Right. No, it's all the time. But it's so cute the way you said, we really see everyone as that. Just the other night, we were at Wingstop. And prior to losing my job, I had a 2-hour commute. I was at the office 9 hours a day. My kids are all in different school districts. Like I had what felt like no time. So I was very impatient if we were waiting for food. So much so I would never even go pick it up. But we went to go pick it up and we were waiting for a really long time. And I just noticed that there was one cashier and there was one person doing just pickups. And I said out loud, they are so adorable. My kids were like, who are you? What happened to our mother? I'm starting to heal.
That's good. They notice. They pick it up. It's the ones closest to you, that really start to notice the shifts and changes. They're the reflectors of it. Yeah, that's
for sure. Yes, I can always tell where my mind is by how kids are going, how the things with my kids are going. And now we're in summer vacation, so I'm going to have a ton of opportunity.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I know we've been talking for a while. I do have a couple of questions that I want to ask all my guests before we end. So I'd like to ask those now, unless there's anything else that you want to add to this wonderful conversation that we're having.
Oh, this is great. It's funny. I've had a sprinkling of you were saying you were Gemini. I've had a sprinkling of people, and it's just, we have the most expansive conversations, because it's not just the willingness to be talkative, but to really pour your heart out. And then I find that that's in the conversations, conscious conversations. What a delightful way to open your heart up. What a delightful way to live. So yeah, just really, I have so much gratitude for you just inviting me on this conscious conversations podcast, because this is kind of like my win too. I so much enjoy it. I'm like thinking, thank you. This is really fun. This is delightful.
Yes, I love that you said that. So one of the things that really impacted me when I got sober is every AA meeting I would go to, there was a speaker, and it's all based on experience, strength, and hope. And when I was recovering from my eating disorder, I had a lot of psychologists and therapists who had never actually had an eating disorder. And I was in one group where I was so hopeless. I was so depressed. I felt like everyone else is going to get it, but I'm not. Like, I'm just going to be suffering my whole life. And I was sharing that. And this woman who was an intern reached her hand over, she touched my arm, and she looked me in the eyes and she said, I know what you're feeling. I've been where you are. And that was the first time that I felt hope as far as recovery from the eating disorder. Now, that was 15 years ago. So look at what that one comment has caused in my life, and the ripple effect that it's had, because now I speak at meetings, and now we're doing this. And so I just really am so passionate about sharing, being transparent, sharing what I've been through, my struggles, what I'm learning, where I'm at, where I plan to go, because it was so helpful to me. And so I just, appreciate all of this. So the first question I have for you is a big one. How would you define God?
Well, I have come to the place of starting to realize in my heart that God doesn't have a definition, that this whole world is a world of definitions, and in the end, I like how Jesus says in the workbook, we say God is, and then we cease to speak. And that statement really touches me. We say God is, Jesus saying we say God is, and we cease to speak. So it's been a journey. I always say spiritual awakening is 1% principle and 99% practice. And I think it's the same with like the 12 steps, the amazing from Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, absolutely amazing principle, which can't be minimalized, but the actual practice of the steps, or the practice of the course, the practical application, is so good. So for me, it's when I've been asked by people to define God, it's just, I start to laugh, because in my own experience, I have desired an experience, and I've been shown that it's the definitions, which still involve the past, that are, maybe we'll call them stepping stones, but there is a leaping off point where I started to be comfortable with not defining God. I can watch, I think Bill Maher, a comedian, interviewing Marianne Williamson, and her bringing up God, and Bill squirming in his chair, and yet they're both with smiles on their faces, and they're giggling and laughing, and they're feeling the love and the connection. And so to me, it's actually something that I don't feel it requires a definition, but it does require a desire in the heart, or a prayer. I want to remember you, God, or whatever word they want to use. Even the word, can be something that is what they really feel, or no word at all, whatever they feel. But so I really find that my experience of life, I get into the joy and laughter, but the definitions have really fallen away. That's kind of more for social discussion. Define, and then, okay. But my question is, how do I feel? That's the most important question for me, to be authentic and transparent with that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that answer. It reminded me, and the reason I ask is because step 3 is we handed our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And when I was raised Catholic, so I had a different understanding of God than I do now. And so it just really spoke to the evolution of how our understanding can change over time through the practices. So thank you. That was so beautiful. So beautiful. Okay, the next question is, what would you say the purpose of life is?
Well, I would say it is forgiveness. I mean, I like in the introduction of the course where Jesus says, this course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is far beyond what can be taught. It does aim at removing the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. I happen to really like that definition, we'll call it, of forgiveness, which is removing the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. So, and that takes a lot of humbleness to let go, because we've been raised with our notions of what love is: family love, puppy love, love of our parents, love of our children, love of our cars, Volvos, love of our sports teams. We've associated love with so many things, and I think it's a journey of discovering and quite a lot of letting go, because people will say, well, when I read the course and I'm looking in there, I'm thinking, how is my experience of like romantic love going to come into contact with Jesus Christ? And I say, well, there's some chapters, 9 chapters between chapter 15 and 24, and wow, that is an interesting intersection when they come together. Because a lot of the questions I get is, oh, okay, special relationship, ooh, it sounds bad. Special hate, ooh, special love, what? Holy relationship, but they still try to put it in the filters of the body and the humans. Oh, I can't. I just want a romantic, holy relationship. And then they have to struggle with what that is. But I liked how you talked about with the 12-step prayer, of really setting it free, letting it go. That prayer of not knowing. It sounds also very Zen. When we come with wholly empty hands unto our God, like in Workbook Lesson 189, when we absolutely are willing to drop our preconceptions and just be present, to just show up in the moment. That seems to be everything. Like, just to show up in the moment without any preconceptions is beautiful. So that's what I think of with that. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for bringing that in. We might have to have another episode just about holy relationships and special relationships. But I don't know if this was a lesson that I've already done, or because I've been doing so much of this work, like I have been studying the course for a while. One of the biggest areas where I find relief is when I pause and I say, I don't know. I don't know what anything's for. I don't know what this is for. And ask the Holy Spirit to return me to truth. That's where I feel the most relief. Like, I don't want to know what it's for. Especially since I'm not feeling peace right now. So that's great if my my idea is wrong. I'll
Yeah.
gladly be wrong.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Would you rather be right or happy? You're just saying,
Yes.
I'll choose happiness. And if that
Yeah.
means be clueless and not know, because I think that's the biggest misperception people have with the course is it's presented as a course in miracles. Okay, so it's got a introduction, preface, introduction, it's got a text, a workbook, a manual for teachers, and clarification of terms. But the thing about it is, when we think of learning a course, we think of it kind of as a linear progression. And I think you're onto it. You have discovered the great secret of diving into the presence of now by just having those moments where you say, I don't know. And show me, Holy Spirit, show me, that prayer is worth all the chapters, all the lessons. That is the saving grace prayer, because we feel so free. We feel like, okay, I am, Lord. I'm right here in this moment with you, and I don't know anything about this world, but I'm here to have you show me. That is beyond that is the greatest gift. That is the greatest gift.
I just remembered this, and I don't know why I did not think of this before, but there are two books that really brought me into that space. And one is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I don't know how to say his name. And your book, This Moment is the Miracle.
This moment is your miracle.
Yeah. So I am not present quite a bit. I'm noticing that, but I do notice those moments that I do get present. It really is true for me. So yeah. So thank you for offering that piece of work to the world as well. I have one more question for you, and it might be, a little difficult to answer, but if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now to your younger self, younger part of yourself that was maybe struggling or lost, what would that wisdom be?
It's all going to work out great. You know how they say don't sweat the small stuff, and everything is small stuff. I would just say, just have faith in yourself, keep trusting, keep believing, and really just know in your heart that it's all working out great. And even if you aren't aware in the moment that it's working out great, I would say it's working out great. It is going to work out great, because that's the feeling I get from everything that I've experienced. Yeah, it's wondrous. It's miraculous.
Yes, I love that. It reminds me of a quote that I used to hold dear to me in very dark times, which was, it's all going to work out in the end. If it hasn't worked out, it's not the end.
Yeah, that's it. That's so comforting.
Yes.
All going to work out in the end. Yeah.
Yes. Is there anything else that you would like to add or end with?
Well, I think, when I really started to feel happy, then everything just started to feel easy in the happiness. And then I started to travel around the world a lot, and then little communities would spring up and things. And so I've used with the communities, no people pleasing and no private thoughts. And that just means with whatever your circumstances are, like there you are with your children, and you have your life and coaching and everything, and to really, sounds like that's exactly what you're putting into practice. Open discussions. Let's talk about this. Your daughter saying, living with myself, let's watch a movie together. It just is so full of opportunities to be transparent, to be authentic, and to start to realize that we don't really need to hide anything. If we really want to wake up, we can be transparent. We don't have to have secrets. We can, it builds our trust. The more transparent we are, we start to realize everybody starts to relax.
Yeah.
in the field of transparency.
Yes.
So I think that's great. You're just a really good example of living with your children, and like you say, it's summer vacation now, so here's some holy encounters with the traffic and the pickup lines and
Right.
all that. That's going to be a fun summer.
Yes. I won't have traffic to deal with until August, but we'll have a whole nother set of curriculums that will
Yes,
arrive.
yes, the form will be what it will be.
Yes. Well, David, I am so grateful and so honored that you spent this time with me. And I just thank you so much again. I will post links to get in touch with David, to the Movie Watcher's Guide, and to anything else that he's got going on in the captions of this video. And once again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.